Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you're joining us today for our student engagement panel. My name is Dr. Tristan Fernandez Kubeczka. I work at System Office The Woodlands for Lone Star College. It's my pleasure to introduce four amazing panelists to you today. So I'd like to introduce you to Professor Kimberlee Ball. She's a professor of history at Lone Star College. She works online and at University Park. Professor Ball excels at fostering relationships with and among her students. She believes that a sense of community and accountability to that community helps to push students through when the workload gets tough. Sometimes it takes more than a desire to win. So what she does is she develops communities and builds her courses to help encourage and push learners to success and completion. I'd also like to introduce you to Professor Roiann Baskin. She's a professor of Spanish and world languages at Lone Star College Sci-Fair. Professor Baskin students relay that her online classes feel just like face-to-face classes. She works hard at building connections with her students from the beginning and is actively involved with them every step of the way. We have Professor Alana Kubeczka. She works at System Office for Lone Star College as an instructional designer and also as an adjunct faculty. She primarily works at Lone Star College University Park. Professor Kubeczka excels in building relationships. She's an effective communicator and is skilled in setting clear expectations. In her courses, she promotes a growth mindset in her students. She embraces technology as a tool, and she cultivates a community of learners. And we also have joining us today, Professor Erandi Mayadunne, She's a professor of chemistry at Lone Star College Online, and Professor Mayadunne creates a positive environment in her online classes to increase student engagement. Her classes have a welcoming environment where students feel comfortable in participating and sharing their ideas. She's also very approachable and uses real-life examples of new developments in the chemical industry when delivering the subject matter. Students feel seen, students feel heard, and they connect the classroom to real-life situations. So today, for this panel, we have three guiding questions that we're going to talk through. And as Eric said, feel free to use that chat, address more needs, concerns, things that you want to bring up to the panelists, stop us along the way. We'll also have a Q&A session right at the end of the panel. But to kick us off, I'd love to start talking about our first question. And we're going to go ahead and start with Professor Ball. What specific innovative strategies or techniques have you found most effective in increasing student engagement in your online courses?
Hi, thank you for the question. Thanks for letting me be here. One of my favorite things that I've started doing very recently is I use the booking app, and I used it as just to make my office hours available so that I'm not sitting at the computer 24 hours a day. And that wasn't very effective. Like, no one came to see me. And so I was like, ugh. So I started requiring it so that they have to come and see me. So they don't have to turn on their webcams if they don't want to, but they do have to book an appointment and they do have to come and see me. And usually it's just a, hey, how you doing? I just wanted to invite you to the class, find out if you have any questions, make sure that, you have all the resources, but also to make sure that they know how to get to me if they have questions in the future. And I have found since I started doing that, not all of them, I have 150 students, they don't all make appointments, even though it is a grade, it's a small grade. But most of them come to see me, and I've found that I have several students coming back to see me later when the course gets going and things get more complicated. They will come and talk to me, particularly about their group project, or they worry about their grades and how they're going to do. And so I have really loved using this in my class because it also gives that sense of accountability. They know me, I know them, and so I feel like I have a responsibility to them, but it also fosters their sense that they have a responsibility to me too. And so that is my new favorite thing that I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberlee. What have you discovered works best with driving your students towards using that?
The grade. It's a grade. And especially at the beginning of the semester when in my class, they start out with all zeros. And so they have to, they want to build that grade up. And so, especially in the beginning of the semester, they all start scheduling appointments. And so for the first several weeks, I am at my computer all the time, just doing these meetings, which I don't mind. So making it a grade made the difference in them coming to see me. And so that really, really helped make them do what I needed them to do.
Thank you. Professor Baskin, what works for you?
Yes, so just like Professor Ball, I also require my students to meet with me the first week of class, which I have found to be very effective, just kind of setting that tone right away, getting to know them, so they can see that I'm a real live person, and just kind of making that initial connection right from the beginning. Something else that I like to do that I have found to be very effective is I use my announcements tool and I create themed announcements throughout the week. So I let the students know ahead of time what types of announcements I'm going to be posting. So for example, on Monday, I always post a video of myself talking to them, just kind of, I tell them what I did that weekend. I kind of talk about what we kind of have coming up that week. And then Tuesday, I always post a funny meme in Spanish, which is by far everyone's favorite. They log in just to see what memes I'm going to post that day. And then Wednesdays, I always post like a music video or something pertaining to music in Spanish. Thursdays, I post a fun game for them to try that again corresponds with what we're learning. So if we're learning about house vocabulary, then I put a little game for them to play, just something additional. Fridays, I like to post videos, could be culture videos, could be just anything, again, relating to what we're doing. And then Saturdays, I like to post like food and recipes pertaining to Hispanic culture. And what I found why this is effective is because students are taking an online class, and so they're logging in at different times. And so they're able to then get a variety of different things no matter when they log in. They can find connections with things that are maybe interesting to them that might motivate them to continue to log in and do the work. So that's something else that I like to do as well.
It's a great idea. Is there anything that you've moved away for in favor of the paced announcements?
Anything that I've moved away for?
Did you start doing something in a different way, like emailing, and then you moved to announcements, or is that kind of just organically just grown for you?
I think it's just grown. I wanted to find a way to connect more with their interests because I like to also give them a survey at the beginning of the semester to find out things that they're interested in, kind of what they like to learn about. And so I'll read those surveys and kind of take information that they've put and try to pepper it in those announcements as well to just try to hit their interest too. So I've just over time found it's been really effective, and I can throw in some extra credit in some of those announcements too. And it's just another way to reach them.
Yeah, I love it, and pull it back into assignments and have them keep discussing. I love that. That's an amazing technique. Let's go with Professor Kubeczka. Do you have an innovative strategy or technique that you find most effective for increasing student engagement?
Well, I mean, of course, everything everyone said is great as well. I do use the discussion forums. Obviously, it allows for a lot of interaction. I try to make sure that I use a predictable framework for class so that the students know exactly like what to expect in each class, that they have some sort of a guideline, they know what's coming, and it seems to, if it's predictable, it seems to be like they're more ready to engage in that because they know what's coming next. I also like to try to do like virtual field trips or have guest speakers because I think that kind of draws them in a different kind of way than just using the textbook or things like that. To have someone from whatever it is I'm teaching have them come in and speak or maybe create a video to add, just having some multimodal sorts of interactive activities is really keeps them. And then of course, giving regular feedback and that communication piece is so important, but them having access to me for feedback is also really important.
I love the feedback conversation. Have any of our panelists noticed that when you reach out to them, maybe by email, announcement, putting additional field trips or items to reach out to them, that you're getting more response back from your students, and in what ways?
I use intelligent agents, and I use them for all sorts of things. But one of the things I use them for is if I notice that they haven't, or I have it set so that if they don't log into the class, then they get it, like for a week or so, they get an email and it's just a little Bitmoji of me holding a telescope saying, where are you? Are you okay? What's going on? Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do? And then I'll have students email me back and say, thank you for checking in on me. I'm okay. It's been really busy, or this happened in my family this week. And so I've just fallen a little bit behind, but I'm okay and I will get caught up. And so that's been really beneficial. And, it lets me know that they're okay, and I don't have to go in and check and see, okay, who's accessing my course, who isn't. It's all already automatically set up. So I may not officially notice that they're not there until I see that email, and then I go, oh, okay, I'm so glad I sent that. And so using the intelligent agents in those ways has been really, really helpful in hearing from those students.
I think
Go ahead.
that's great. Those are great, but I think moderating the discussions has really helped. Not just posting the discussions and having students speak with each other is great, but when they know that I'm popping in and I'm kind of giving some feedback in those discussions as well, and I'm not just leaving it there and saying, did you have, counting their 2 posts, but I'm actually giving some feedback there, they're more inclined to engage with those discussions or those course things when there's feedback.
Yeah, I actually do a kind of a hybrid. Professor Baskin, I follow something similar to you. I give a survey at the beginning and keep a spreadsheet of like quick things that I can pull back into the discussion. So as I'm popping into the discussion, I'm bringing back their major or whatever tidbit that they've provided me so that I can keep the discussion relevant and personalized to them. I do have a question for you, Kimberlee. What intelligent agents do you use? And are you using them as a plugin in D2L? How are you going about that?
So I use them through D2L, and I can set it up so that if they've turned in their draft, I can say, hey, I see that you turned in your draft. That's great. I'm going to provide feedback and a document for you. So, please be looking for that and know that I do have your work. Or, and you can set them up at the beginning of the semester or even before the semester starts. And I copy them from course to course and then just go in and change the dates and change the specifics of the assignments. But, they're through D2L. You can get to them through class progress, and you can get to them through the course admin link as well. And they're so easy to set up, and they're just, I've found I offer extra credit opportunities through there. I do all sorts of stuff with my intelligent agents. I love them.
Thank you. Got one more question for the group surrounding our first item, and then we'll move on to our next. From the question and answer chat. So if you have any chats, be sure to put those in our Q&A, and we'll get to those as needed too. Nicholas Furr says, how much of a grade do you assign to meet with students at the beginning? He does 10 points out of 600. What do you do?
I do 10 out of 1,000.
I do 10 as well. I don't know exactly. I think it's closer to probably the 600, but I do 10 as well. And then in addition to having them meet with me the first week, I also require them to meet with me midway through. So I call it like a midterm check-in. So that way it's like just time for me to say, okay, hey, we're halfway through. How's everything going? Is there anything that needs to be adjusted? Are you able to keep up with the pacing? Like, it's just a good, like, check in again with them, and I can kind of reach maybe some of those students that have kind of started to fall off a little bit, and then also encourage those students that are doing really well and kind of help them expand more and direct them in areas maybe that they can push further. But I do require a midterm meeting as well, which I found to be pretty effective.
I use it as the first week's grade, but I do the survey. So I do a feedback survey at the beginning and in the middle, right at midterms, and then at the end as well, so that I can improve my teaching, because I always am trying to, constantly be improving. And students really do give you great feedback if you're asking the right questions. I have found that they really do, help you grow in your teaching skill as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. For our second question for our panelist, what challenges have you encountered in your efforts to increase online engagement, and how did you overcome those?
So I have, there are always the students that you can't reach. And I try so hard, and I think I do tend to kind of fall off towards the middle. But one of the things that I know that my students struggle with is they don't necessarily know how to college yet. Like, I deal with freshmen, and a lot of times they're coming out of high school, they're used to being told exactly what to do and when. And so I use checklists, and in the checklist, I add, check your emails, check the announcements, see what's going on. Now, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to use the checklist, but I do create a checklist. And I have students at the end of the semester, on the last test, I ask kind of questions about the course and like, what did they use? And I'll ask them about, did you see any intelligent agents, and answer any of the reflection opportunities? Did you use the checklist? And a lot of them will say, yes, I found the checklist to be very, very helpful. So there is that. So that's one of the things that I do to help keep my students engaged and on track, and make sure that they have, just sort of a formula to follow each week. So each week has a checklist, and so they can follow that. So that's what I use.
Yeah. Professor Baskin.
Sure. So, again, like Professor Ball had said, a lot of times students, they'll maybe stop responding to emails. They're kind of falling off a little bit. So I use an app called Remind, where I text students. And this has been very, very useful, because more often than not, students are on their phones all the time. And so it's a way for me to reach out to them and just say, hey guys, I sent an important email, please log into D2L, because they might not remember to always log in or check everything. So texting them has been so beneficial. And with Remind, the app that I use, it is free, and I can add documents to it. I can add pictures. So I'll add little memes or little things too, just to kind of send them out. And they always like to respond and get those texts as well. So that's something that I try to do to help them when I kind of notice maybe they're not as engaged, and a lot of them have their phones, so they'll check their phone more than they check D2L. So.
I also love Remind. I also use that as well, because I have that same issue in teaching ESOL. A lot of times my students have some language barriers, and I think the biggest challenge is their digital literacy. That's what I have found, especially from my content area, that sometimes they are not as proficient in using online learning platforms and digital resources, because maybe they did not have those where they're coming from. And so really trying to spend, for me, the beginning of the course providing a lot of video tutorials on how to access those things, how to access resources, how to access our library resources. There are a lot of things that you students don't, we think that they know all of those things and they know where they are, but there's no one actually showing them. So I have found video tutorials specifically where I am showing on my screen. I use Usia a lot, and Loom. Before I was at Lone Star College, I used Loom a lot to show them exactly what to do and where to go. And I can send those videos really quick videos through Remind, which is great if they're on their phone and they're trying to use their computer. I also try to spend like the first class. I realize that some of you are asynchronous, but in a synchronous class, you really have the ability to, share your screen and show. So taking that time, front loading, that digital literacy I found has been really effective later on in keeping them engaged, because now they know where to go and they know how to get to the content that I'm creating. And kind of what Professor Ball was saying, I also have a very predictable, every module has the exact same parts. So it's not technically a checklist, but kind of the same thing. They know exactly what to look for and what is going to be expected. And I think setting those clear expectations helps with that too.
Thank you. Professor Mayadunne, what challenges have you encountered in your efforts to increase online engagement, and how did you overcome the challenges?
Yes, the challenges I'm encountered mainly is the student engagement, how to engage our online students in the classes. So I try to set up the office hours more often, and I try to make the students the class more accessible, and I try to be more accessible to students. And at the same time, I try to have the weekly office hours, and then if they ask a particular time outside the office hours, I try to meet with them. And main challenge is, like, I found with our students is the distraction they have. We have diverse student population. They work, and when they come to the class, sometimes where they connect to the class from from home, so the home distraction. So I try to tell them, okay, from in the syllabus and repeatedly, there are a certain number of hours you need to spend on the class. So please focus that, and try to go from there. Mainly the overcome challenge is the communication. Try to communication over and over again, and then that's how I try to overcome the challenge. Thank you.
Yes, those are amazing answers that segue into this. How do you address the difference in engagement among the levels of students from different backgrounds, technology background or access, different learning styles, personal challenges? How are you working towards their success through those? Professor Ball.
So that is that's a really difficult question.
Yeah.
I try to create a variety of assignments so that they're not all written, but they're not all just quizzes, because I mean, for quizzes are so either you got it right or you got it wrong. Where the writing can be a little bit more subjective, I can work my way around to see the answer, and I feel like that works better for the grades. And I do try to reach them in a variety of different ways. I have my weekly announcements. I post a video at the beginning of each week, and I make it like the week before, so it's fresh, so my hair matches and everything. And I tell them, hey, this is what you've got going on this week, and if you have any questions, I'm here for you. I also I use QM strategies so that if they're missing assignments, I can email them specifically, and I'll go kind of look at their grades and go, hey, I'm just checking in on you. And this is aside from the intelligent agents. I'll go, I'm just checking in on you. I'm concerned you've missed, MO 1.2, which can be found in week 1, and MO 7.3, which can be found in week 7. Please let me know if you're okay, if you need anything, because sometimes, especially our students that are taking face-to-face classes and online classes, they kind of tend to forget about the online class to focus on that face-to-face class. And so just sending those, you can use the class access, and you can go and see, you can just kind of look at whose grades are up, whose grades are down, and just kind of check in on them that way as well, to try to encourage them. And I try to remind them that we use Ally. All my documents are accessible. So if it's particularly for the readings, if they need to translate that into a different language, they can use the immersive reader and it'll translate, it'll highlight nouns and do all sorts of really cool stuff, and it'll read to you. So, I mean, there's so many benefits to it. And so I try to point out that we do have those tools for them as well. So those are some of the things, but I'm not perfect at it for sure.
Professor Nicholas Spur in the chat says that they give 1 point extra credit on each exam and quiz as a survey on issues with open-ended written response. Do any of you guys use a similar method to engage your learners?
Kind of, not on the tests, but when they complete a certain assignment, like especially towards the beginning, they completed a plagiarism assignment, and I'll send them an email and just say, hey, you completed this assignment, great job. What did you learn about this? And if they submit it they can submit a little reflection paragraph, and they get an extra point for that. And at the end of the semester, or closer to the end of the semester, like, hey, you've done all of these assignments, you're doing great. Like, what was your favorite and why? And that way I kind of get some feedback from my students. But I also have like a midterm reflection and a final reflection where, what were your goals at the beginning of the semester? How are you doing? What obstacles did you think you were going to encounter? What did you find? What's working? And is there anything else that I can do to help support you? And I have had a student say, you could use Remind. And I'm like, I'm scared of Remind. I don't understand, but I already took a note. I've got to figure this out. It's time. So thanks for that, y'all.
I do use, I don't know that I don't give a 1 point on each thing. I actually make part of every quiz a couple of questions that are kind of like survey questions that are just kind of about the topic that we are discussing at the time, that are open-ended. And so I do make that a part of those. And really, as long as you answered it, you just get points. So it's not really extra credit, but it's kind of like a good confidence booster, because they know they're going to at least get those 2 questions at the end of every quiz correct. And then I do have the beginning, middle, and end of term surveys, which, like I said, I do give one of the grades for our like weekly assignments for just for completing it. And it really does help me to compile some data and, have that data-driven instruction, and where I'm using the feedback to constantly improve the course. Like even midstream, if some things are just like, these assignments are really too, difficult, or we're not understanding, then I can kind of change course, because every class is different. Just because you're teaching the same course that you've taught in a previous semester, the students are not the same. And so really being responsive to what their needs are that particular semester, what's going on, is really important too.
Any more panelists have final thoughts for question number 2?
I also, just pertaining to the last topic we were talking about with the extra credit and getting feedback from students, I use a platform called Flip. Used to be called Flipgrid. It's like a video discussion board. It works very, very well for a foreign language. And so one of the things I have that we use it throughout the whole semester to speak and practice the language. But at the very end, I do ask them to record a little video, and they have to give advice to the next group of students of how to be successful in this class. And I ask them permission if I can show those videos to the next class. And then I show those videos to the class I have after that, so they can kind of see and hear it from their peers, what they felt, how to be successful, things that maybe they did really well or that they struggled with. So that's been something too that's been very effective in kind of reaching students and hearing it from them too.
Let me piggyback with Roiann. I also do exam reflections and extra credit for the very first day. I assign the first day survey for students. The first day survey is mainly I ask, like, what about your job? Like more like holistic questions, not like, about themselves. Do you have how is your family? It's completely optional. So they can answer and they submit to me. I said, this is only for my eyes only. So please submit the assignment, like submit the survey. And then when they submit the first day survey, if they submit, they get extra credit. At the same time, I get to know about the student population in my class. So I give them extra credit. And towards the end of the semester, I do some discussion boards. The discussion boards about the some ongoing real world example. I do some real world example, and then I'll ask them to discuss, post the discussion post, and also I ask other classmates to respond to the discussion post. In that way, I give the extra credit. I also do the, as Kimberlee said, I also do the exam reflection reflection as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have all the hearts popping up, and the chat also said it's a great reminder that students are not the same. And so we have one more question, and then we'll open it to more questions from the chat. For the panel, question number 3. How can instructors collaborate with students to foster and maintain a more engaging online learning environment? Let's start with Professor Ball.
Thank you. This is a great question, and I think it's one that we're always trying to figure out new and different ways to do it. For me, like one of my favorite things that I do is in their introduction, instead of just, what do you hope to get out of the class, which I ask, all the things, but then I also ask, like, what are you most afraid of? And I'll tell them, like, I was really afraid of bees, but I got stung by a bee and I lived through it. So I'm still, looking for that new, that new fear. Haven't found it yet, but I'll keep them posted. And then what questions are inappropriate to ask you, because knowing how to communicate with each other can really help. And I have some students who are like, you can ask me anything, I'm an open book. And some students are like, well, you can ask me about some stuff, but I don't want to be asked about politics, I don't want to be asked about religion, I don't want to talk about money, and so you start to see these very different individuals, and so they kind of learn how to talk to each other. And then I create spaces where they can talk to each other throughout the course of this semester, because it isn't just about my relationship with them, it's about them building relationships with each other. And so, but I'm always looking for new ways.
Professor Baskin, what do you do?
There's a couple of things I've been doing in the last, couple years that have been surprising in a good way. So one of the things I started doing on the survey that I give them is I ask them what is their favorite song in Spanish. And so then what I do is I take all of the students' responses and I compile them into our class Spotify playlist. And then I share that out so that they have now a brand new list of songs that they can listen to help, them learn and listen to Spanish. And they absolutely love it. And it was just like a random thing I thought I would try one time. So that has been very successful to kind of get them to collaborate and kind of have a shared experience. And then the other thing that I started doing is hosting game nights and just making it very chill, like low stakes. Like it wasn't, sometimes I would give them points to come. Sometimes I set it up different ways, but I'll just host a little game session in WebEx or Zoom. I'll have prepared some games, either using like Kahoot or Factile or quizzes or just, whatever I can make. Just a fun little game. Or Book It is another one that they absolutely love, and it's good for vocabulary. So I'll just have them come, and usually I'll get anywhere from like 7 to 10 students, which I think is pretty good for a session like that. And we'll just kind of play games. I'll play with them. We'll just kind of chat. It's just super relaxed, and they seem to enjoy that because it's not like a like a serious class or anything. It's just we're playing games and we're reviewing. So that's also been very helpful too.
Great ideas. Professor Kubeczka, how do you collaborate with students?
So a couple of things. I also do a lot of gamification, and I think that is a way to maintain that engagement with students. And there are several that Professor Baskin also spoke to. I like GimKit as well. It's one where they can actually input part of the answers. So I will even sometimes make it the assignment that they create our review. So sometimes, I ask them to create a review for that we can all use, a game code, because most of those platforms, Quizzes and Quizlet and Kahoot, have the function where you can have a couple of them for free. Like you can create a couple of free ones, so it doesn't cost them anything, but they will be then the one that is running the game, and I'll play with them. And so that has been a real great way to engage them as well. And the other thing is like keeping that communication open to kind of co-create our materials as we go on. Of course, I mean, I have a course outline and things that we're working for, but like I said, every semester I have an individual group of students who have different needs. And so really kind of getting that needs assessment at the beginning, I feel like gives me the opportunity to co-create things that are going to be really successful for them. So if we don't need to spend as much time on whatever topic we're talking about, if we don't need to spend very much time on, I don't know, a grammatical concept because they seem to all get it, then we can spend more time on something, something else that maybe everyone's struggling with. Or I could take some of their feedback from the surveys and create a couple of like extra things that semester that were more aligned to what they need. So really co-constructing my materials as we go along. Of course, we're following a framework, but allowing there to be change. Like it doesn't have to be a static course. Just because I taught this last semester and the semester before doesn't mean I have to use all of the same things. So constantly evolving and making sure that I am taking in that feedback and also then utilizing it to make the class more personalized, I think really makes students think, oh, wow, she's really concerned about what we need to know, not concerned just about, is she following her same course that she's done every single semester for the last 5 semesters. She's really like engaged with what we need. And I think that really brings in a lot of students who otherwise were maybe not engaged. And then of course, because I teach ESOL, I'm trying to foster those like relationships with their cultural differences as well, and making sure that I'm being responsive and using some culturally responsive teaching techniques.
Yes. Professor Mayadunne, how do you collaborate with students?
Yes, to maintain the engaging environment, the main thing I do, mainly I make the classroom very welcoming to my students. And I try to be accessible, and the welcoming means I try to always, I post the announcement every week, and then when the announcement also, I said, okay, these are my office hours. I list my office hours. And also I said, okay, feel free to email me, feel free to meet me anytime. And then, and also I, when there's a office hour also, I try to, like we talk about the topic, we talk about the subject matter at the same time. I try to be like, to another person, like try to be personalized with the class, and with my students. And as Professor Kubeczka said, I also try to make the classroom more attractive. Like, the chemistry is a lot of like, formulas and equations. So I try to use the type of Bitmoji classroom, try to be a little bit more interesting, add some images and welcome signs. So I try to be that way. So it's not like, okay, just the concept all the time. And also another thing I do to make the classroom more engaging, I do a lot of interactive videos. You may wonder how I do the interactive videos, because the class is fully online and they can do anytime. So each topic, I make these small videos that very interactive. So they need to work with me and they share their feedback with I found this software I found from a colleague. He said like a Padlet. So they share in the Padlet the answers. Like similar like one assignment I do is the interactive periodic table. At the very beginning of
Panelists,
the
we have about 4.5 minutes remaining.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the interactive periodic table activity is these students, they like, you know, they follow my guideline, they follow my steps, and they do the very creative periodic table, and they post the periodic table in the Padlet. So other students can comment the the more creative periodic table, and who has more votes will win. Something like interactive games. And also I use a lot of the time, I use real world examples other than just I try to find, okay, what is going on in chemistry these days, and then I try to relate with the concepts. So in that way I try to maintain more engaging learning environment. During the time factor, maybe I'll stop and I'll let others to ask questions. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the webinar chat for us. We can get to a few of those in our last few minutes. I also put a QR code up on your screen. We have some more resources that we'd love to send you about student engagement online. We have a couple of one-pagers that'll help you, checklists that'll help you. We took note of a lot of the software that our panelists had told you about, so we'll give you some links to some of those and some information to some of those. And so if you feel so called, feel free to use that QR code. It'll take you to a survey where we can gather your emails and send that out to you. We'd love to send you the software. So go ahead and put any questions that you have in our last 2 minutes, and hopefully we can get through maybe one more question. I think we have about 2 minutes. Let me pose one really quickly. I'd love to hear from the panelists. Tell me about how do you, or what's the best way to gather data from your online students so you know where they're at? Is there a best resource or technology that you're using to gather and monitor where your students are data-wise?
So in the class, and I use one of the different HTMLs for the course design, but it has a class access, and I can click on that and it will tell me who's been in the class that week and who hasn't been in that class that week, and I can compare their grades. I can see who's like it'll tell me who's participating in discussions and who isn't. And I find that's a really useful tool because I can just click that button when I enter the classroom and find out what's up.
I also use a class progress tool, and also with some survey, the extra credit surveys. And when I ask them to do a survey, I use the normal Google surveys. So then you have all the answers recorded with you.
There's also, through Remind 101, you can send out like quick little surveys as well that are just like Google Forms real quick. That'll help you gather that information, and then it puts it right into a spreadsheet for you. So you can just keep all of those in, one folder where you can access them pretty quickly. Of course, the online tools are available as well. And a shameless plug, you can also use your instructional designers on your campus to help you find some of those things.
Professor Baskin, do you have any last?
All of the things that the ladies had mentioned, and then if you are using other separate applications, like any of the game apps or Flip or Mentimeter, any of those things, a lot of those already have wonderful data tools built in that if a student completes a quiz or an activity, it will tell you exactly what areas they struggle with, how many, what I mean? All of those separate applications as well, if you use those, have the data built in. So those are great as well.
Fantastic. We want to thank our panelists for joining us today, for chatting about student engagement, what that looks like online, for sharing your best practices, some of your tips and tricks and software and tools. And so we are so thankful for your time today. We hope that you enjoy the remainder of the conference. Thank you so much. Have a good day.